Hello and welcome back to Vassals of Kingsgrave for our 59th episode of the Grand Linear Reread through A Song of Ice and Fire. My name is Adam, also known as drownedsnow on the podcast of Ice and Fire Forums, and today I am joined by...
Alix, also known as Aiwendil on the forums.
Patrick the Tall.
Mary, or Nymeria on the forums.
davidhhh on the forums.
Jock on the forums.
All right, so we got a nice little crew together for this as we get into some more Feast for Crows chapters into the Ironborn story. These events take place from January 25th to January 29th of 300. And we are covering Asha 1, the Kraken's Daughter, John 10 from Storm of Swords, and Victarion 1, the Iron Captain. We're going to start with Asha 1, the Kraken's Daughter. And I believe that's David.
It is. Let me apologize up front in case I accidentally say Yara and get confused at some point during our discussion. Just in case.
Okay.
Hopefully I won't, but...
That's okay. If I remember correctly, when Roto Cheese went back and did the version of Feast for Crows, he pronounced everything differently in there. So, you know, even professionals can do that for some reason.
Okay, so... Asha is looking at the crowd that is celebrating at the Great Hall of 10 Towers, disappointed that so few from only 5 houses have come to support her claim to the Seastone chair. Her favorite uncle, Roderick Harlaw, Lord of the 10 Towers, wasn't in the hall and had left to read with Christopher Botley. She found out that her mother, Alanis, is in bed at the Widow's Tower, named after Roderick's sister, Gwyneth, who has been grieving since her husband died during Greyjoy's rebellion. She doesn't know how to tell her that Theon is dead and puts it off. She tells the steward, Threetooth, to look after her captives, Lady Glover, and her children, and warns her to make sure that the baby who is sick doesn't die. She's happy to be back at 10 Towers, which always felt more like home than Pike, the newest castle on the Iron Islands. She visits Roderick in Book Tower, where he is reading Archmaester Marwyn's Book of Lost Books, in which Marwyn claims to have found 3 pages of signs and portents containing visions by Aenar Targaryen's daughter before the doom of Valyria. Roderick tells Asha that she's too late, and Asha explains that she was late because they had to find a wet nurse for the Glover baby. She pages through a book about Maegor the Cruel's war against the poor fellows. Maybe Roderick got an early copy of George's Sons of the Dragon novella. Asha is convinced that Balon was killed. Roderick admits that Euron returning the very next day is a little too much of a coincidence. She needs supporters and ships to drive Euron from her father's chairs, but the only ships and families there are from the island of Harlow, brought by Roderick, except for one banner she saw for Botley of Pike. Roderick tells Asha that Aeron Damphair has called a Kingsmoot, which the other priests are supporting. The captains are gathering on Old Wick. Roderick has been reading Herrig's History of the Ironborn, which says that at the last Kingsmoot, Euron of Orkmont sent his axemen upon his foes, and House Grey-Iron ruled for 1,000 years until the Andals came. Asha wants to learn about Kingsmoots from the book, since there haven't been any in 2,000 to 4,000 years, depending on whose account you believe. He warns her to stay away from Euron Greyjoy's... He warns her to stay away since Euron Greyjoy's name is too similar to Euron Grey-Iron. He thinks that the dream of kingship is madness and that they should choose a side in the war and claim more lands when they win. When she says she wants to win the moot, he tells her that she won't be chosen because she's a woman and no woman has ever ruled the Ironborn. She says no fight is helpless until it is lost and insists that she has the best claim. If there are rocks to starboard and a storm to the port, a wise captain steers the third course. Roderick asks about Theon. Asha tells her that he must be dead, but they couldn't identify his body among the body parts that had been ravaged by wolves in Winterfell. Roderick tries to convince her to stay by offering to name her his heir, but she refuses. Outside, Christopher Botley finds her. She asks if he is now Lord Botley, and he tells her that his brother was killed by Crannogman at Moat Cailin. But he is lord in name only, since Euron took his lands and gave half to Walden Winch, the first man to call him king, and half to his uncle Germund, or German, I don't know, both of whom now support Euron after he bought them with lots of treasure. She promises to restore his lands when he is queen, but all he wants is her. Her mother had brought Christopher and 4 other boys from Pike to foster and replace her sons. He and Asha had gotten close, sexually experimenting with each other, and called it love. But when he started talking of marriage and many children, Yara lost interest because she wanted adventure. Soon, Maester Kaelin found them at play, and he was sent away to Blacktide. Christopher had written to her, but his letters were never allowed through. Asha asks him if he will speak for her at the Kingsmoot, and he says he will go anywhere for her, but thinks it's a bad idea because he thinks Euron will kill everyone like Euron did. He tells her that he's been gathering men from all over the Iron Islands. He tells her that she will marry him, and she tells him that he doesn't really want that. He tells her that he has never touched another woman, and she tells him to. She tells him that she has touched many men, some with her lips and others with her axe. She remembers the first time at 16 to a beautiful blonde sailor on a trading galley from Lys. He is shocked and desperate and grabs her arm. She puts the dirk to his throat and threatens him. She says she will send him a woman tonight and he can pretend it's her if he wants. I am your queen, not your wife. Sorry, that's a huge info dump in this chapter.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on here, but what a sad boy.
Right?
Yeah. And I will say, just to say up front, so with these Ironborn chapters, there are some significant issues, I think, that come up in the Winds of Winter preview chapters. We're not going to discuss those like overtly here, but I think we will have a kind of a detailed discussion of those in the after show, just for those of you who are avoiding those spoilers. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Asha, like at every turn, it's like, look, you're a woman, so you can't lead, and I commend her for saying, screw you, but yeah.
Yeah, she's a good Greyjoy. She has spirit, that at least. That's as you said, commendable.
Right. But in the middle of all this, we get this massive info dump. And I wonder how much of that is because, if you remember originally, there was going to be we had a whole podcast about this, but there was going to be a 5-year gap here. And Asha was supposed to be the POV character that kind of narrated everything we missed. And he had to rewrite it all to fit it into the new non-5-year gap version. But I think there's still a lot of info dump here. Don't you think?
Well, it's the first time we see the Ironborn from a point of view that's not Theon's, from the point of view of someone, or was the damp-haired chapter before this? Anyway, this whole side of the Ironborn with the horror laws and all the power struggles, we never got any of that before, so it's a lot of.
But yeah, damp-haired is like the first chapter in the book.
Yeah, right. Forgot about that one. But he's mostly by himself with his priests and his water.
And he's crazy, so you don't get a very good view inside.
Exactly.
He doesn't really
sort of
have...
like, oh yes, king,
I beg your pardon.
Uh-oh. I was wondering how long it would take for us to offend Patrick. Didn't think it would take long.
Saying that is quite. I mean, are you shitting over him because he has a religion, or is because he's an Ironborn?
I'm
no,
sure.
he's
little of both.
It's because he's a little bit out of touch with reality. I mean, like, he's no Victarion. Like, Victarion at least is kind of, I don't know. Like, he's a little delusional, but he understands things a little better than Aaron does.
Victarion is the most removed from reality anyone can get. But I'm getting ahead of myself.
Yeah. No, but I mean, but he actually has a goal that's maybe realistic if he was maybe a different person.
Yeah.
Aaron was
Aaron has been revived through CPR 3 or 4 times,
he's just
or 5 times, or 11 times.
Drowning people.
He keeps drowning himself too. He's done that several times. I'm not sure he still has his full reasoning capacities.
See, that's where you say CPR, but I think it's more than CPR. Again,
he's BLS certified. I mean.
I think he's continually it might as well be more than just regular CPR, right?
Yeah, I mean, sure. The point of this book is that there's magic and there's other forces at play, and
I would definitely love if there was some drown god magic, if something happened
tangible
that showed that these guys are pulling from some well of power, but so far we haven't really gotten that.
No,
So
the only
it feels
the
sort of
only,
like the 7, you know?
yeah, the only thing I actually like use as a, you know, that makes me think that there might be something specifically is when Patchface drowned and was
Yeah.
resuscitated, and he has prophetic powers. So I'm that's what I'm thinking, that if that the person, the deity that he met, or something that he met while drowning, was the drowned god, then it depends on if you're like the drowned god's chosen or something like that.
Well, I think the
Somehow.
problem for the Ironborn is they believe in the drowned god, but he lives on the other side of the continent. And so they're in the wrong water.
Yeah, I was
go.
gonna say, Patchface may have met the drowned god, but there was no Ironborn or priests involved. So
the drowned god is like on the other side of Westeros, just waiting. Like, where are these people at?
There's no evidence that the drowned god is involved with Aeron Greyjoy at all.
Right.
Well, there's no evidence that he isn't either. So
sure.
Unless
this is true.
That I'm pink pig, but you know.
I mean, I'm just saying, it's always like that, right? Really, when you're talking about religions, right? So let's just assume that because there is no outsider saying, actually disproving what he's saying, then, well, let's just assume that at least his faith is strong enough in his religion, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
We could also talk about Asha. Since this was her chapter.
It's her chapter. What does she have to do with it?
She's a woman. Yeah.
Yeah.
She just goes around being told how she's a woman and can't do things, and it's like it's so frustrating because you're like, she's kind of the best option,
right?
Fuck these people.
Is Patrick going to agree with that? That she's the best option?
I don't know. She's a good option.
She's the most reasonable, I would think.
But that's not necessarily a good thing for the Ironborn, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, for long term, I mean, I think it would be like creating an alliance with the North and all this. You know, she has all these ideas that maybe could work.
Yeah, but maybe also not.
Yeah, but they don't have the numbers or the resources to just force their hand everywhere. They never have. That's been their problem.
No, I'm just thinking that basically the culture of the Ironborn is too ingrained that stuff like suing for peace and negotiating lands with your sworn enemies and stuff like that. That seems weird.
You're kind of doomed to failure, I guess, no matter what they do. Huh?
Harris.
Yeah, basically, you either get a revolt or get smashed in war. Basically.
And they're also way too misogynistic to ever listen to a woman. But that's a whole other issue.
To be fair, that's the entire country.
Yeah, well,
other than Dorne.
The Ironborn are particularly misogynistic.
It comes up later that it's not even just like the misogyny necessarily. Is that, I mean, there is, but that like he's like, oh well, no Iron King has ever needed a hand. Like that's weakness, you know. Like even like much less a woman, but like they're like you can't have anyone giving orders and like doing your business. I'm like, oh my gosh, delegate.
And
that's why you have problems.
Helping, he needs help. That said, I mean, let's be honest. There's no place in the Seven Kingdoms except for Dorne where, you know, a woman would be given this much power. And it's an interesting thing to think that in fact, I mean, Balon set her up to be his heir. How is that even possible? A, in their culture, and B, in the entire culture of Westeros. I mean, he set her up for failure in a certain way because to be able to do this.
Because he clearly didn't set her up. He was like, well, you're my heir. But he didn't do anything to prepare the people for it. He was just like, you're my heir, whatever. And like, I mean, left it at that.
I just know that like the first time I read this chapter, I didn't take in like any of it. So as I'm rereading it now, I'm like, oh, because, you know, there was just so much of an info dump and so many new characters and none of them I cared about and none of them seemed like they were going to be interesting to the story until the chapter we're not talking about yet from Winds, you know, and I was just like, what is the point of this? And I kind of felt that way about everything like Iron Islands and Dorne in these last two books, you know, and I'm wondering if George didn't kind of encourage that kind of feeling by choosing not to even just call this chapter Asha and, the other chapter Victarion and all those others. It's that, did he kind of not make these the secondary, not so important, so we don't care about them in the way he set it up?
Because there was a preview chapter. It was a preview chapter before Feast for Crows was released. That's why they have a strange title, so to reveal who they are.
But then he ended up staying with that for pretty much all of them, for them in both and in Iron Island. So it all just seems like subliminal, and I think that's part of why fandom has kind of hated, a lot of fandom at least, has hated both of those areas and those storylines, and they also seem like they're tagged on, and some would argue they are.
Yeah, well, it gives credence to the. At least it explains Euron, which obviously is going to be big baddie,
right?
Somehow.
Seems to be.
So this explains it much better than. If we hadn't had such an info dump about Ironborn culture, you wouldn't see how unnatural he is in every way. He's not just like a product of being a Reaver. No, he is basically rebelling against everything, right? So, that we need this also to see how fucked up Euron is and how much he's fucked up the whole family. Because you also need to know about the creaking door and everything like that.
Right. I guess the thing for me is it just feels like a lot of this stuff we get here comes sort of out of the blue, out of nowhere. And I kind of, when I was reading it, think about how we think of, say, The World of Ice and Fire and those novellas, and that they're interesting backstory, but they don't seem important to the main storyline. Now, like I said, with that chapter we'll talk about later, it seems like they might be, but it made me feel like, as I'm reading this, I was just resenting it. Every time I read, one of the chapters of the Greyjoys or Dorne, I was just like, why are we here? Where's Dany? Where's Jon? Where's Arya? Where's all the people, Cersei, that we know about? Why are we now talking about these people when they're not important? Now, that may not be the case, but maybe by naming these chapters weirdly and not giving them their names, it kind of set that up for us to think that,
Yeah, maybe. I feel like these chapters also have a function of world building that we don't necessarily have in the Dany chapters and the Jon chapters and the Cersei chapters, because we know these places since the beginning of the series.
Right.
And this is, we're still learning a lot about the Iron Islands. Mm-hmm. And I feel like it was interesting, too, that one of the main characters in this chapter was the reader, who's apparently completely different from all the other Ironborns, because he just reads books all the time and doesn't fight and doesn't participate in that culture, but he's still respected and he's still a lord and he's still important. I feel like it gives a little bit of nuance to the whole showing the Ironborn culture and all their weird traditions. It shows that there are a variety of people in that place as well.
And of course, he's named Roderick, and every time I think of Roderick, it makes me think of Roderick Forrester from the Game of Thrones Telltale game. Just one of those, you get that name, and I love that character, so it's kind of, just one of those reused names.
Yeah,
Roderick is
at least he's not named Christopher.
Right. Yeah, the Ironborn names are really weird all around. None of them are all that good. Like, why would you name two of the sons that are going to be major characters, Euron and Aeron, that are so similar? When I first read this, I still couldn't figure out who was who and what was going on. Luckily, most of the time, Aeron got called Damp Hair. But
yeah, the show maybe was like, we can't have these people. No, they were so confused about Asha and Asha, so
Right.
We certainly can't have more than one Greyjoy with such a similar name.
We don't even know technically on the show if Aeron is Aeron. He's never gets named, as far as I know.
Yeah. I mean, it's. I don't even. Yeah, I don't think he officially exists. Or I don't know. Yeah, they're weird about how smart their audience is.
I think he's named by in the IMDb, but other than that, no.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, in the credits.
On camera, I don't think he gets mentioned.
But I don't know. I mean, he definitely wanted to go down this path, and I don't know if he has. I mean, I think he clearly does have more intention for the Ironborn, and maybe if abandoning that that time skip has kind of delayed this whole thing. But I do find the naming convention of the with Feast Dance, where he has all these weirdly named chapters, I do find that a little off-putting. I don't know why. I mean, because normally a book would have a chapter, and they all have different names. Right. And I guess we just got so used to John, Edward, but especially for characters that we already had a bunch of chapters for, them getting different names was a little weird. I'm not sure why he did that. I think maybe he just was wanting to be different or make the chapters more distinct and easy to reference. Because if you tell someone, oh yeah, in John 6, they might be like, wait, which one's John 6?
Right.
So.
Yeah, it does make it feel like, well, I thought it was basically to show that these characters were more fleeting, like they're not supposed to be there like as a main character.
That's really the point I was making.
Yeah,
but also
because then you get like Cat of the Canals, and you get Prince of Winterfell, and you get characters that we have followed for a long time, and it's sort of like they're in a transitional moment or something. They're not themselves in that moment or something.
Right. I wonder if he wasn't just doing that to make it less seem like these other characters aren't important. I don't know. Well, if we take Arya and give her a new name, then it doesn't make it seem like Aeron isn't important. I don't know.
Anyway, what else you want to say about this chapter? You guys have anything more to say about Asha?
Was this the first time we got the story of Dennis the Dreamer, even though we don't get her named yet? How she prophesied the doom. We get a hint of it. We don't get the actual story, but we get the hint.
I don't think it's mentioned before this point. I could be wrong on that, but
so we get the first hint. I think it is because I wikied it, and the only mention of her is in the World Book. So I think this is the first time it's mentioned, and then the World Book is we get the.
I think the fact that we don't remember, like, is this the first time or not? Kind of. I mean, to me, that just shows, an element of George's writing that he plants so much stuff in these earlier books.
Yep.
That doesn't seem significant at all. So, like on rereads, we found how much have we found? We're like, oh my gosh, this story is right there. Or there's a sentence or something. It's very clearly planted. How much of it he had, plotted? Like who's to say? But he either built something really great out of that, or he had it plotted, years and years in advance, which I think is a credit to his, strong ability as a writer.
Right. My other point was the one with the bit from Sons of the Dragon there, where we get a little bit of the history of the early Targaryens, just to mention a sentence, and we have no idea who this even is at the time when we're reading it, but it becomes important in his backstory later.
Yeah, I still have not read Sons of the Dragon yet.
You haven't missed much.
Yeah,
that sentence kind of summed it up.
The World Book told me kind of what I needed. So yeah, and I think on that subject there is kind of a bit of a fatigue in the fandom waiting for the next book, and there's maybe a little bit of bitterness that we're like, here's a book about some stuff you already know about, and there'll be another one pretty soon, and no, it's not Duncan Egg.
I know.
It's just like
that we'd all be happy with, right?
Which is great that a lot of this was done when they were constructing the World Book, and maybe there's not a lot of effort he has to put into this, but it does feel like it's like you're not giving us what we want, and you don't have to give us what we want. It's fine, I guess. It's your world. Do what you want.
No,
with it,
but then we don't have to get overexcited
right.
for each new novella.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
I mean, the Rogue Prince. After that, I was kind of like, eh. Like Princess and the Queen, I greatly enjoyed.
That was really good.
I mean, that was a whole look behind the curtain of stuff that we didn't know.
Right.
So.
Well, it seems like it is the first time. Actually, when she's mentioned by name.
Actually, she isn't mentioned by name.
Oh, no, she's not mentioned.
They mention
the story's brought up. Yeah,
they
mention the story. Yeah. Okay.
His daughter. They just say his daughter. Because I googled that myself and was like, yeah, they just says Aenar Targaryen's daughter, and it doesn't even say technically what she prophesies. They just says that the 3 pages contain visions by Aenar Targaryen's daughter before the Doom of Valyria, but it doesn't say more specific than that. But clearly, that's what he's going for.
So, Christopher and Asha, star-crossed lovers, together forever.
I think it's funny that she totally would have let him fuck her, but he never had the balls to actually do more than grab her boobs.
Well,
you know, the first one who tries is some guy from Lys who knows 6 words of the common tongue, and one of them's fucking. That was enough for her.
Yeah, and I do love how Euron has come on strong, and he's just taking people's land from them and shit. You know, and this guy's like, you know that he's not, the right man for Asha, because she's like, well, I mean, you don't have to give me my land back. I'm just cool to be your consort. And she's just like, oh my gosh, you don't get it.
That was not what you wanted to say to get this woman.
Yeah.
I love when she's like, I have enough problems with my uncles and a sick mother and a father who's been maybe murdered, and I don't need a puppy.
Yeah, it's a good way to put it. And I always forget about their mom is still alive. Every time I'm like, oh, that's right.
Yeah, she still exists.
Because she just doesn't really play a role in these books so much.
She'll end up surviving them all.
Yeah, and I mean, clearly the Ironborn don't have the whole Queen Regent thing or anything like that. It's like,
well, yeah, because
as soon as Balon died, he was just she's just tossed away,
realistically, though, I mean, the Seven Kingdoms don't have that either. I mean, until Cersei, that didn't exist, did it? I mean, I don't think.
I mean, because
history have we seen that?
Look at the Princess and the Queen, and there are a few spots where you have a strong queen that. Kind of
she
guides things until the son comes of age or whatever. But yeah, I mean, Cersei, I think, is the first person that really makes stuff happen. Assassinates kings and shit.
Do you think there hasn't really, Roderick doesn't talk about the Long Night or anything like that at all? Seems like. Do you think that the Long Night or the others and everything ever reached Great Wick and everything?
Oh, you mean you think that they went across the water?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Probably not. How would they?
Because I mean, it didn't go to Essos or anything. So.
Well,
there was talk about.
There's stories that have gone to Essos. So, no, it definitely went to Essos.
Well, they knew about it. Yeah.
They did have something the likes of it because of the Great Lion or something like that they talked about.
And remember, Azor Ahai is an Essos thing, not a Westeros thing.
Right. But I mean, the actual, the battles and all that. When were the Iron Islands founded? I should remember this, but.
Well, they're basically First Men things, so they must have been founded. Yeah. Well, this is.
I mean, I guess the population has always been quite scarce on the Iron Islands. So, I mean, there's basically legends and histories about the Long Night everywhere, including Essos. They have similar things that might be the same thing. And I also think just the fact that Roderick doesn't mention it here doesn't specifically mean anything. I mean, he's not doing a lesson on the Iron Islands history, so.
Right.
And they have no real hint of what's been going on north of the Wall anyway.
Yeah, so.
Because they've remained cut off. I mean, they haven't allowed ships to leave, and I don't even know if they've been getting ravens, I guess, but people don't tend to take the Iron Islands into account.
Also, they don't have maesters, so it's a bit hard sending them ravens.
True.
I guess. They communicate by drowning.
The
little bubbles in the water.
The mainland are like, nah. We'll skip that. I just love how that I just love that, like, it's the one bit we get here in all the books where a woman is, like, sexually excited and interested and wants it. Because in all the books, we don't see that much of it. And that, her bit where she, she wishes that Christopher had actually gone further, and that she was excited when, that this sailor she was with wanted it. I mean, we don't really ever see, wanting sex among women in any of our major characters,
I mean, you get a little bit of that with Dany.
Outside of marriage, yeah. She gets a little. She gets.
Oh no, she was
afterwards
with one guy once. With one guy, she not once, but one guy.
Her servants.
I would say that when he's done, putting the moves on her, she is ready. That's basically what she says.
But in this case, she seems to have been pushing for it, which is nice. A little switch.
Yeah, I mean, I think the great part about this is where she's just like, go out and get laid, dude. Like, come on.
She offers to out and out find him someone for tonight, and he tells her, pretend it's me. I don't care. Just like get this out of your system already. Which is
he's like the un-Ironborn, like this poor kid.
Totally.
Anyway, let's
actually, David. Mm-hmm. It just I know you forget about them because you don't like Dawn very much, but I think Aryan is also quite sexually open and.
Sure, that's true.
Oh, that's
Jordan in general. That's true.
But I get your point. Yeah, it's a different thing from other female characters that are basically just trying to avoid being raped all the time.
True.
To be fair, not a lot of the point of view characters in general are like, oh my god, I want sex.
That's true.
You just see them having it.
Yeah.
Well, they're like a lot of men have it while they're thinking about something else.
But you mentioned John, and you mentioned who else? Like Theon, we see him just after it, basically.
Yeah.
Dany. That's like all Theon thinks about for a while.
Dany
this is true.
Wants Dario a lot.
Oh yeah. See, so Dany is also hot for Dario. So we have another female, but so it's actually not like a great disparity between female and male sexual awareness.
True.
Oh, I would guess.
Yeah.
And of course, John.
And Jaime wants to fuck Cersei all the time, as well.
Well, that's just Jaime, okay? He's weird in it.
And Cersei wants to fuck the Seven Kingdoms.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
And whoever,
all right.
And whoever looks remotely like her.
There. Yes. All right, so let's
face it, it's not John that it instigates.
We're going to come back to this when we get to Victarion a bit. So,
yeah.
Let's get to our next chapter here, which is breaks this up. I guess happens at the same time though, which is John 10 from Storm of Swords, where John is being sent to murder Mance in order, to prove that he's worthy to be at the Watch still. Does that make sense? And I believe, Marie, you have that?
Yeah, I do. All right, so in John 9, in the midst of the battle for the wall, John was confronted to Jaina Slint and Aletha Thorne arriving at Castle Black, and he was put in an ice cell. So this is John 10, this is 4 days later, and Maester Aemon fought for him, claiming he is a loyal man of the Night's Watch. So Thorne and Slint decide that instead of letting John die in an ice cell, they would send him as an envoy to Mance Rayder. Of course, as John realizes, this is all another way to ensure his death, because his mission is actually to kill the king beyond the wall. But John has no choice but to go, so he goes. He's lowered in a cage on the north side of the wall, beaten by the wind and the cold. He starts walking towards the wildling camp, and a raven cries, "Snow, snow," on his way. John struggles with the thought of murdering Mance at a parley and thinks of what his father would have thought and how he will be remembered, if he even is, a traitor, a turncloak, a murderer. Halfway through the no man's land between the wall and the camp, he is joined by Torment. It's like nothing has changed, almost. They exchange news and talk until they get to Mance Rayder's tent, where he waits for them with Varamir and Helm at Dog's Head. They know, explains Mance, how few knightsmen there are, how their resources dwindle, and how dire the situation is on the south side of the wall. Mance and Jon enter the tent alone. Val and Dala are there, and inside Jon is stricken with the sight of a great war horn, the greatest he ever saw. Mance Rayder confirms that this is indeed the Horn of Winter, the horn that could take the wall down. Why did Mance not use it then? Dala answers that sorcery is a sword without a hilt, and there's no safe way to grasp it. The short road is not always the easiest. Mance goes on to explain that he doesn't need the horn, the wildlings are simply too many compared to the Night's Watch. But they do not come south to conquer. They want to hide behind the wall, not bring it down, because the real enemies are the others. Mance asks that the Night's Watch let the wildling pass, and they will surrender the Horn of Winter to the Watch. They will not follow the king's law or keep the king's peace, however. They will remain free wherever they are. Jon knows that this will never work, and that Jaina Slint and Aletha Thorne would never even hear him. And if they don't agree, Torment will sound the horn in 3 days. So Jon doesn't know what to do. Should he go back to the wall and try to deliver the message, even though he knows that they will refuse, or kill Mance, or try to, or try to smash the horn to ruins so that the threat can be used. But he has no time to decide, as the sound of war horns interrupts the meeting. Something is coming from the east. The wildlings organize to fight, as the first assailants wearing black can be seen. Could it be Eastwatch? Jon swears he knows nothing of an attack. Word arrives. They're actually surrounded. The wildling host is taken completely by surprise, but Mance rallies his commander and his fighters and leaves to coordinate the defense. He instructs Varamir to keep Dala safe and to guard Jon. Through his eagle, Varamir sees golden banners. Then he screams, and his Shadowcat screams, and Jon sees the eagle up in the sky, burning. In the tent, Dala is giving birth. Trumpets are blowing all around, but wildlings have no trumpets. The camp is in mayhem as great columns of heavy horse emerge. Could it be the king? Varamir flees, Jon draws Longclaw and stands before the tent, intent on keeping Val and Dala safe. He sees banners, cannot make out the sigils, and so many gold and red banners. The wildlings break. Torment's line break, Mance is overtaken. Finally, Jon can see the royal standards, a burning heart and a black stag, Stannis. Jon turns away and goes inside the tent. And it's done.
Great.
Why does he turn away? What is he thinking there? That's what I'm wondering. What was that? Was that a I'm angry? Is this I'm happy? Is this I'm safe now?
I think it's a all of this is out of my hands, and I'm just going to try and protect these two women that are here from being taken in the chaos that this is, I guess.
I don't know.
Like, what can he do? He won't, I mean...
True. But what could he have done 10 minutes ago?
Well, not much, but...
Yeah.
I guess when he understands what's going on, it just... Yeah.
This whole chapter feels like it's just an illustration of how futile it is for the Night's Watch and the wildlings to be fighting among themselves, and how ridiculous the divide between them is. Because one minute, when he's talking to Mance, he's thinking, well, we could never allow the wildlings to live in the gift, like they would terrorize the north and it would be awful. And then 2 minutes later, he's protecting Dala and Val because they're people and he doesn't want them to get hurt.
Right.
Yeah, that's one thing that's really striking to me in this chapter and in a lot of the Wildlings chapter is that like when he meets up with Tormund is like, "Hey, buddy, how's it going?"
Yeah.
He just betrayed them, right?
Well, yeah, but to Tormund, people are not allies or enemies. They're just people that are doing stuff in their life, and maybe at some point you have to kill them because you fight them, but it doesn't mean like he just really separates the two, and that's really incredible because he sees Jon like I guess he doesn't care where his allegiance is. It's Jon, so yeah, and even Mance is in a way kind of like that. I mean the wildlings in general, and Jon sees that too, and I think that's why he defends Val and Dala because they're people, they're intelligent people, and they are here, and he's not gonna let them be massacred in the whole thing. And he's like that. I really like that in this setting with the wildlings.
Yeah, I said that too. I loved how you see the bond that they all got from the time he spent with them, and yet at the same time, the entire time he was there, he was lying to them. He was planning to betray them. He was spying on them. He was he was doing awful things, but he still cared about them, and he does still, and they care about him. And in the middle of this battle that's been going on between their peoples for, thousands of years, they formed a connection. And even though he just completely screwed them over, they still talk to him like he's Jon, and he cares about them and wants to protect them too, even though he's supposed to kill Mance. It's this weird mix all around.
But that's also the point that Grit and everyone is trying to put home is that for the wall, the Night's Watch, for them to use everything is so arbitrarily put up. Where does the north end and the far north start? Basically, it starts where this wall has been put up, and everyone on the other side has just been named enemies because. And then you think about how wildlings must have to survive in a place where it's always winter, almost always winter. I mean, I'm not sure how many places in
Narnia?
The far north,
right?
They have like land you can grow. I think there's a few places because of some hot springs or something like that. But other than that, nowhere. So. Of course, there will be people coming down trying to get some food once in a while. It makes sense. So, in all that, if you take that in consideration, I think it's the North, the Seven Kingdoms, basically mistake barbarism and savagery with people being
survival,
desperate. Yeah, desperate and surviving, and then they forgot who the real enemy was, which is the others. That's why the wall was put up. Also,
I feel like a good platform for like a Stark at some point would have been like, hey, we're gonna get a bunch of ships and we're gonna offer them all a trip to, a warmer climate somewhere. Probably not in the Seven Kingdoms because they don't want to kneel. We can send them to ASOS somewhere and they can, do what they want over there.
Yeah, but they're also proud. I mean, just like the Northmen, they could also move away, but they don't. Even though it's less hospitable in the north than it is other places. So I don't think that would work specifically. But
could they? I mean,
some of them would stay, but I think a lot of them would just be like, yeah, sure, get me out of here.
Okay.
Right. I mean, is that really an option for people in this world? I mean, it's not like today. I mean, think about even in the history of our world, until the last 50 years or so, maybe 100, people didn't really have a lot of options to, if they're in a bad situation, they got to make it work because that's all they got.
Yeah, they died 5 miles from where they were born.
Right.
Well, it's not completely true. There's
not
been
completely.
A lot of
over time, long migrations, but individuals don't just like, hey, I'm going to go to France,
There's been a few exodus
We did that all the
history.
time.
I mean, that's the British did that all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, over centuries, yeah. But I mean, in this world,
no, like go to France, come back, go to France again, come back.
Yeah, the Vikings did that all the time as well.
If you were rich, yeah.
Yeah,
plan a Scottish rebellion in France. Go to Scotland, rebel. Come back to
Joe on the street, the farmer doesn't have that option, though.
Yeah.
You know, the king does, the noblemen do, but like your average worker, a merchant can't just be like, hey, I think I'm going to go to Paris tonight. I mean, that, at least 100 years ago, certainly didn't have that option.
Oh, the Viking Age was basically built up around that. Well, I think I'll go out now, I think. And most of them weren't, like, well off. I mean, one of them owned the ship, right? At least one of them had.
And, north of the wall, one thing they have is timber.
Yeah, I mean, it's not completely as I see history is not completely like that, but the point I think maybe is that I wanted to go back to is that the wildlings never see the Northmen as enemies, so to say. They see the Northmen as people, bastards that just keep all the food for themselves and and try to impose rules on them that they don't have any right to do. Everyone should be able to survive and eat well, right? That's not even a very weird thing to think. I think I should say think one more time. I think.
I think
maybe. So yeah, I think again. I think I feel like the wildlings. The more you think about them and ponder their situation, I think they had the right of it. In general, there might be some weird ones in the midst, like the Thens and whatever.
You think?
Craster,
Sure.
Craster as well. Yeah, he's like
some individual behaviors aren't the best, like Crasters and the cannibals and harm a dog's head. But on the whole, I agree that it seems pretty ridiculous to view these two neighbors essentially as enemies, because they're really just in the same sorts of climates, trying to survive in the same way, but just one side decided that they were the ruling people and the others weren't invited, and that was how they became separated, but they're actually the same type of people.
But isn't that the history
think about
of humanity?
Immigration in like the Seven Kingdoms is like, except for the wall and the wildlings above the wall, if you have peasants like in Dorne and like let's say something goes wrong and they have to flee, they just go somewhere else. Like, or if they just want to go somewhere else, they can go somewhere else if they're so inclined. You know, if they want to cut their ties, there's no one saying like, hey,
the Manderleys came from the Reach or somewhere, and they just moved to the north.
I think the whole wildlings issue is a bit different though, because so the Night's Watch wasn't intended to keep the realms from the wildlings at first, but in the recent years, it's also normal for people in the north to try and protect themselves from the raiding parties of the wildlings, because they don't just go south of the wall to try and establish themselves as individual farmers and remote from civilization. They go and steal, and kill. So I mean, some of them at least. So.
Yeah, so that kind of grew out of necessity
natural,
and boredom, right? Like the Night's Watch had nothing really to fight for thousands of years, so makes sense. Yeah,
which was kind of their purpose, was to stop these creatures that we haven't seen.
Yeah, and I liked the Targaryen queen. She sort of, I don't know if she supported them because of the wildling attacks or because she actually believes in magic, which would make sense because she's flying a dragon, right? So it would make sense for her to believe in a possible upcoming doom, right? So
Maybe.
I don't know. I'm not really thinking about what her motivation is, but it's funny to think that like 4,000 years later, this queen decides to do an unprecedented thing, which is to grant them twice as much land as they had before. So that's funny, interesting, at least.
And what do they do with it?
Nothing.
Not much.
Nothing.
And over time, it's been kind of left because they don't have the people to man it.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, the Night's Watch needed like an ideas man or woman or whatever to attract people. That it's like, hey, we've got land up here. We're gonna have a good life. We're gonna have things and people going on. You just have to commit to living here.
In the cold and the gross.
From other places. Yeah.
But in the cold and the gross,
But if you're living, in the alleys of King's Landing, I guess. But maybe like having a homestead is appealing to you, right?
It's kind of like
PR.
If you were the say the tourism guide for northern Alaska, are you going to have a lot of luck convincing people from LA to move up there? I'm not so sure.
Yeah, but we had a lot of luck convincing people to travel to Oregon and Washington, places that get colder, places where they didn't really know what was going on. There were no settlements. It was dangerous. You might die just to get there. Yeah, because these were people that were in cities that were overcrowded and people were dying from disease, and it was an attractive option to go somewhere and try something new in a fresh land. Work the land to own something.
Also, actually, you did have a lot of success attracting people up to Alaska because of the no sales taxes and everything like that.
And the money they give you every year.
It's still one of the least populated states in the country.
Yeah, but there is some, but you don't need don't need to be populated like Los Angeles is or whatever, King's Landing and the area around that. You just need more people. You don't need
Instead of the Night's Watch having a couple hundred people and no one in their land farming or doing anything, could you get 1,000 people to come up and try to make something happen? You probably could. I mean, I would think.
Yeah, I think so as well. At least if you do no taxes, something like that, just a share of your food each year.
Yeah. You work off the land and you give us your excess to help us out.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're way off track.
I know, right?
So I think at some point Stannis shows up.
Stannis? Who's that got to do with this?
Stannis.
This is such a great chapter, especially the first time you read it, right?
Right. You have no idea. I love how he creates such chaos. You have no idea what's going on. You don't know where we're heading. And then we get this big surprise in the last couple of sentences.
Yeah, and Mance very quickly, John's like, well, they didn't tell me they were going to attack if this is what they're going to do. And very quickly realizes, well, no, those look like Eastwatch men. I'm like, I don't know how he knows that. I thought they would all look the same to him. That's okay. And then it's like, oh, no, we've got knights. And, he rightfully turns his attention towards that instead of just, killing John right there, which he probably should do.
I don't know. Did you not pick this up that was the idea that Stannis was coming before or what?
Like before this chapter, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you knew he was coming, but it had been so long, I think, between when you thought he was going that way and there's a whole lot of stuff that has to happen off screen. He gets to Eastwatch, he gets the men, they decide to go across the wall, cut across. There's a lot that's going on there that we've been cut off from for, I don't know, a quarter of the book or something.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, I was just the only thing that surprised me a little was that they chose to write north of the wall, which was, I enjoyed that little thing very much, but I didn't think about that actually. But other than that,
I guess they're there to fight wildlings. I mean, not wildlings. They're there to fight others, and that's where they would be.
Yeah, exactly. I would have thought they would have showed up at Castle Black and then like marched through the gate and all that. But...
Yeah, exactly. I was thinking in something else, but as soon as I saw heard about the attacking, then I was like, well, this must be Stannis.
I had no idea.
Right.
I think
once
the reason
John's
why...
out there, you know something has to happen, or he's dead.
I think the reason why he attacks north of the wall also is that he arrives at Eastwatch, right? And I guess he learns while he's there what's the situation with the wildlings. Because messages have been sent to Eastwatch and all that. So I guess he has time to just decide what to do, and what is he going to do with his hosts on the south side of a wall? And anyway, so
basically, like the element of surprise and being able to spread out and run these people down on horse is a huge strategic advantage. Versus if they notice men are pouring out of the wall, they can just rush it and close it off, and now you've got a bother.
Right.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. There's no doubt about that. It was just I hadn't thought about that specific aspect that he would go north of the wall. So that was the interesting part of that. The last part of this chapter was that he chose to do that and just ran them all down, which is awesome.
Even Stannis exceeding expectations since 300 AC.
Stannis the man is in his glorious moment.
It was a very glorious moment. I must admit.
It's probably his best moment, period.
Yeah, yes. I'm pretty sure his armor is gleaming in the sun, you know.
His sword is shining.
And his forehead is shining.
It's on fire. Well.
Yeah, he's got his flashlight turned on, you know.
And his sword's on fire.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, here's a question I have. Is a little counterfactual history here. What would have happened if Stannis hadn't shown up here? What would Jon have done? What would Mance have done?
I would expect him to die.
Would he have? Would he have tried to kill Mance because that was his mission? Would he have gone for the horn? Would he have just ended up fucking up and dying? What do you think?
I expect he tries to kill Mance and just knows he's going down. I don't know what other option he has.
Yeah.
Other than, what can he can't kneel at his feet and say, "Hey, look, they want me to kill you. I'm just gonna let you know. Please don't kill me." That's not a very Jon move, I wouldn't think.
But he doesn't want to kill Mance either, clearly.
Yeah, I think I don't know which one he would choose, but he also has the option of going back to Alistair Thorne and Janos Slynt with Mance's terms and being like, well, if they kill me, fuck it. At least I did the right thing, because I think he believes it would be the right thing.
Right. I don't
to
know.
At least try to negotiate.
I don't know. I see him trying to kill Mance. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if Mance actually lets him go back, honestly, but
I don't know.
Or they make kind of a deal where he goes back under wildling supervision.
Yeah, I don't know. I agree. I kind of agree with Adam in this one, because first of all, I don't think Mance has completely, forgiven Jon for everything, even though he has a civil tone. So that would be. I don't think he would like to let Jon go. Other than that, Jon has his first real example of how Men's at the Night Watch really act is Corin Halfhand. And Corin Halfhand in this moment would have tried to kill Mance.
Would he have, though?
Oh, yes. I think he would.
Yeah. But maybe if he'd known... I mean, here's the thing. Right now, what is Mance trying to do right now? He's not trying to kill anyone. He is calling for peace and saying, look, all we want to do is get away from these fucking zombies. And...
But why did
That's
he do that?
not unreasonable. That's not an unreasonable thing. He is saying, look, we want peace now. We just want to I want to get my people. I want to save them. I want to save these people from the zombies. And Jon agrees with that, right? I mean, that's got to be something Jon wants. So would he just kill him now and then, by effects, let all these people die? I don't know.
But he would know that none on the other side would agree to those terms. I mean, why, if he just wanted the wildlings to pass through the wall, why didn't he at least try to send an envoy and ask for the permission to go? I mean,
yeah, right.
Because that wouldn't have happened after thousands of years of
fighting. It wouldn't have happened. But then again, it's a futile attempt. Right now, he will, if he tries to say, well, I want peace now. Well, you just attacked us with all your might.
True.
How are we gonna believe?
Yeah, and I mean, like, even if he suspects they're not gonna let him through, it doesn't lose him anything. It's not like it gives away the element of surprise. Like, they know he's coming. They know that they want to get below the wall. They've known for a while, so.
I think the reason why he asked for a parley and that he wanted it to be at the wildlings camp is because he wants whoever comes to see the Horn of Winter, or the allegedly Horn of Winter.
Yeah,
because he's not just asking to go through. He's saying he tries to make a deal, like,
I can take you down.
Let us go through, and I will give you the horn and never threaten you with it ever again. Or if you don't, well, I can take the wall down. So I think he needs that. Yeah,
and that's
I think he needs the horn.
That is fair. That's a fair point.
That's a very good point, Murray.
Yeah, because with that, I mean, ultimately, that basically puts the Night's Watch in their position, where we've got these zombies coming, and you're safe right now, but if you don't let us be safe too, then you're in the same boat as us. So, and then what would have happened there? I don't know. So maybe Mance would have let Jon go back to negotiate with those terms of, look, this wall's coming down if you don't,
But I don't think that they would have accepted in anyways, because.
So then the wall would come down.
Yeah, if we believe that it's actually the Horn of Jordan.
True. If it is.
If it is, then it would have come down, yeah.
If Sam
Do you believe it is?
I don't know. I don't care.
I mean, we've had that. You don't care.
No, I really don't care about that. I think that's a red herring.
Yeah, I do agree. I think it's most of it is.
Do you think the concept of the horn is a red herring, or do you think that this particular horn is the red herring?
No, I think the concept of the horn is a red herring.
Yeah.
I don't think.
It's kind of Schrodinger's horn, right? Because you don't know if it is the right horn until you blow it, and if you blow it, and it is.
Right.
So,
the title of the
You've
podcast.
screwed up.
I'm not going to comment on that.
Yeah, this is just my view of things as someone who knows nothing about physics.
Yeah, everyone's view of quantum mechanics and the Schrodinger's cat is anyway, it's not exactly. It's
to
not
be
quite
fair,
that, but
nobody understands quantum mechanics.
Yeah, nobody. But the
yeah.
Schrodinger cat stuff is not. It's not that.
No. It's talking about something being both at the same time, not like a state of you don't know exactly what it is. Not it being the both at the same time. It's like the uncertainty, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's not both at the same time. It's just until someone looks, it just doesn't fixate on anything.
Yeah, but that's applicable as well.
I guess so. I guess it's applicable to the horn thing right now.
Because we don't know what the horn is until we do know. Once we know, then we know, but we don't know right now.
You know, there's been some wildling who's like, just snuck off and blown the thing and nothing happened.
Right.
I was just about to say that. There's probably someone who picks it up and plays it every night.
Yeah. If Lord of Bones blows a horn in the woods and no one hears it, is it Jormungand's horn? I don't know.
I really think this should be the title of the episode, basically.
Schrodinger's horn.
I like it. Do you think Mance believes it's the Horn of Winter?
No,
I don't think so.
So it's all bluff. He
Yeah,
just has a big horn and he's passing it on as
I believe that he needs to represent that he believes it. I mean, not necessarily to Jon, but for the people.
Yeah.
I think it's like a rallying device. And it's like, we got this horn, but we don't want to use it because it's too powerful, guys. So let's just not touch it, but follow me. He's probably like, I don't know what this horn is. I don't care. We're just gonna brute force our way across the wall.
All right.
Am I the only one here who thinks that Sam has the horn right now?
No, I agree. I mean, if there is a horn, I think that's the one. But
right, which takes us to possibly the chapter we're not talking about yet until the finale, until the after show.
Yeah, I haven't read that chapter, so I'm just gonna leave.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, well, we can't talk about how Euron has his dragon horn that, like, who knows? It kills
it's already in dance. Totally.
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
Like it clearly is not fun to blow. So.
Nope.
But
I don't know.
They do blow it at the Kingsmoot.
Yeah, and people die.
Yeah.
So the guy who blows it dies, but the wall doesn't come down, so it's not the same horn.
It's not. No,
but
it's
that's not the
horn,
one I'm talking about. No, that's not the one I'm talking about.
Yeah,
there's magical horns that we don't know exactly what they do.
There's
but
several
maybe
horns.
It does something.
Well, there's one for dragons, one for the wall, and
reminds me of all the magic swords in the Legend of King Arthur. He's always coming across all these swords, and like they all have different magical powers, and he's always the only one who can wield them.
Of course,
well, obviously.
Obviously.
Where's the dang horn that like summons the Krakens, man? You're
right. We need Kraken.
He needs a Kraken horn.
Kraken horn.
Euron's
it's
getting
in that it's in the Kraken horn, the one that Kraken whole point, isn't it? Yeah, that.
Great call.
Right.
Yeah.
They talk about a guy who has this Kraken horn.
Oh, I missed that.
But of course, he'll never use it because it's too dangerous. It's
yes.
Mutual assured destruction. You don't blow your horn.
Is it really a Kraken horn then?
I have to respect my authority.
Yeah, I mean, it's like
that can be
horn doesn't need to work as long as people believe it works. I mean, I think that's kind of with all of these horns, except for maybe the dragon horn. At some point, that either has to work or people are going to.
Or you could.
That's bullshit.
Or you could just blow your own horn.
Oh, Euron shoots his own horn all the time. Anyway,
summon the horny Kraken.
We've got about 10 different possible titles for this podcast.
Oh goodness, let's keep going.
I just have one more thing about this chapter. It's just a reaction to the situation with the wildlings and the others. The whites are right at their tail, like they're attacking the wildling camp every night. And when the people attack here, at first they're confused. They think it could be the whites or the others, and they're like, no, they only come at night, or like it can't be them. But like this really drives home how terrible the situation is. Like the wildlings are literally dying by the minute. Yeah.
Every night.
And it also brings into perspective, like, they really need to get behind the wall, and it's not in their interest to blow it down.
Right. It's just a threat.
Right.
It's a threat they're using because
it's leverage.
That may be the only way they can get through it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there definitely is a tone of that when he says, why don't you just blow it, It's like, I'd rather just get on the other side of the thing that keeps us safe. But anyway.
But that may be the only way they can get there is with that leverage and that threat. So.
Yeah.
One little moment.
Hey, once we get across, you can blow it and see if it works. But let's give me like a day's head start.
Well, yeah, no, you don't want to do that because then they're coming still. So you haven't gotten anywhere.
Yeah.
One little moment I did like, though, was when Tormund and Jon have a toast to Ygritte, kissed by fire. I just like that little moment.
Yeah.
Just a nice little callback.
Should have never left that cave.
Yep, and he says that, and he says it, which is probably true.
And then he remarks that, like, Ygritte would be like, you're stupid.
Yep.
Or you should think I was a coward or whatever. But
Although he says he would tell her if he does end up getting killed here, maybe if there's an afterlife, he'll get to tell her that he should have stayed in the cave with her. And then she'd be pissed.
Sad
on that note, John's not always fucking up. Sometimes he's a sweet romantic who does a decent job. Anyway, let's move on to our final chapter here. And,
who could be doing this one?
I don't know. It's the most interesting character in A Feast for Crows. Victarion's first chapter, the Iron Captain, and I think that's
who? I don't know.
Who? Patrick? Is that you, Patrick? Do you have that one for us?
Yes, it is I. Well, I'm gonna. I tried to write a fitting resume of this, but it seems like, I mean, for once, I must admit that the Tower of the Hand has done a really good job. I mean, they have left a few words here and titles here out somewhere, but I'll stick mainly to that one and then add a few, nice words once in a while. So yeah. Iron Victory enters Naga's cradle off of Old Wick. Victarion joins Newt the Barber at the prow as the remains of the Grey King's Hall come into view. He remembers how Balon stood beneath those ruins at the beginning of the Greyjoy Rebellion to be crowned by Tarl and hailed as king. Newt assures him that he will be likewise hailed, but King Victarion is not so sure. He did not want to claim the crown, despite many of his captains, including Red Ralph Stonehouse, Ralph Kenning, and Ralph the Limper, trying to convince him that he could not allow Euron to sit the Seastone chair. But when Aeron called the Kingsmoot, he left Ralph Kenning in charge of Moat Cailin to set sail for Old Wick with 9/10 of the Iron Fleet. Fickle winds and rough seas delayed his arrival, but only one ship was lost, which tells how good Victarion is as a fleet commander. Behind Iron Victory, the rest of the Iron Fleet sails in a ragged line, including Grief, Iron Vengeance, Hard Hand, Iron Wind, Grey Ghost, Lord Quellan, Lord Vicken, and Lord Dagon. Awesome names. The bay is full of longships, many of which Victarion recognizes, including Lord Roderick's Seasong, Lord Dunstan's Thunderer, Lord Balon's Nightflyer, Silverfin, which had been Lord Swanee's ship, and Silence. Also, I need to add that there's also a lot of captured ships there, which are, most of the longboats are shored on the beaches, but all the captured ships are out in the bay itself. Victarion orders Grief and Iron Vengeance to take a position between Silence and the sea, and for the rest of the fleet to seal off the bay going ashore. Aeron greets him at the water's edge and blesses him with sea water. What is dead may never die, but rises harder and stronger. Many of them, men of the many houses swarm him as he comes ashore, and that night he feasts 50 famous captains. Those in attendance include Fraleg the Strong, Alvin Sharp, and Hotho Harlaw. Hotho offers him a bride, but he says he has no luck with wives. He has had 3 in total. The first died in childbirth with a stillborn daughter. The second died of a pox, and he beat the third to death. Lord Balar also speaks to him of ending the war his father was killed during Greyjoy's rebellion, and he was a hostage in Old Town for 8 years, becoming a worshipper of the Seven. He considers all of Victarion's brothers to be mad and wants Victarion to end the war, which he will not commit to doing. As the evening continues, Will Humble loses a wager that and has to eat his boot. Lenwood Tawney fiddles while Romney Weaver sings a reaving songs, and Orlan Elred Cod dance the finger dance until Elred loses a finger. Okay, so late in the evening, Asha makes an appearance. She tells Victarion that more than Greyjoys will be fighting over the throne. Dunstan Drum plans to make a claim. Tarl has been heard to say that Maron Wolmach is the true heir. Victarion says a Greyjoy must be king, and Asha agrees, but says that Euron comes before Victarion and Asha comes before them both. Just then, a new group of people come in, including John Meyer, Torwald, Lucas Codd, Germund Botley, Orkwood, Stonehand, Quellen Humble, and the Red Oarsman, Ralph the Shepherd, Ralph of Lordsport, and Quoll the Thrall, and finally Euron Crowseye. Euron spars with Aeron, causing him to leave in disgust. Asha accuses him of killing Balon, which he denies, and gets into a sparring match with his supporters until Victarion brings an end to it. Victarion tells Euron to go, and he does, which is also Euron. Victarion is the only one actually being able to say anything to Euron. Is also a cool thing. Many others leave as well, and much of the merriment in the tent dies. Asha asks Victarion to go walk with her outside. When they are alone, she asks why Euron left 3 years ago. She had been in the Stepstone stealing from the Sunny pirates at the time. Victarion does not want to talk about it. He tells Asha she will never be queen, and Asha reluctantly agrees. She has been courting captains for 4 days and nights, and only has her own men, the Harloves, Trisopher, and a few others to show for it. She proposes that Victarion become king with her as hand, a position that has never existed among Iron Men. She wants to end the war. Lady Sybil has assured that if they hand back Deepwood Mud, Torrhen Square, and Moat Cailin, the Northmen will cede Dragon Point and the Stony Shore. This would give the Iron Men the land they need, and the two sides could make common cause against the Iron Throne if attacked. Victarion says that Sea Dragon Point and Stony Shores are already there in their possession. And with Robb dead, there are none to oppose them in conquering the whole North. Asha disagrees, but Victarion, knowing better, will hear no more of this and rejects her offer. Asha says, foolishly, that he needs the Harlors, but he counters that Hotho is already with him, and that he will have the Harlors and the throne. Asha warns him that all the captains are talking about Euron, and not of either of them. She asks if Euron killed his wife, and Victarion explains that Euron had put a baby in her belly and forced Victarion to kill her. Balon exiled him, never to return as long as Balon lived. Asha leaves, saying she'll put in a claim for the Seastone chair. Very good summary of the Tower of the Hand right here. Although there's not enough adulation.
We're all like,
There's not enough adulation towards Victarion in this, but except for that.
Sometimes you want to side with Victarion. You want to like the guy.
Do you? I don't.
Do you?
I never do. I never do.
I mean, like, just in general, like he's kind of like the beat down brother. And he could be a decent guy, but then you're like, oh, well, he got my wife pregnant, so then I had to kill her. And you're like, dude,
Too much sexism to that whole time.
He forced me to beat her to death.
Yeah, like, okay, so you're kind of a terrible person. Awesome.
The moment that got me really bad was when Victarion, when he thinks that Asha's offering to marry him, and he starts getting a hard on. And I'm back to a few weeks ago when I went, ew. In my first reread, I had the ew cast, and we're back.
And we're back.
Yeah, and it's like he could have been positioned as the Ironborn to support, as like, yeah, okay, Asha's coming to him. There could be an alliance here, but he just keeps fucking it up. He just keeps being an idiot. I mean, she makes a point that's like, yeah, no one's talking about us. They're all talking about Euron. Like, that's really serious. And he's like, no, it doesn't matter. I'm going to be king. Like, okay, dude.
Yeah.
Would it make a difference if he actually had said that, yeah, sure, I'll name you? He would first of all been looked at as weak, having to have a woman to support him.
Here's the thing. Victarion spends his whole time thinking, I'm a big manly man, I can't look weak, so I have to beat my wife to death. I have to laugh at my niece because she's offering a very serious alliance.
That's
like,
and you don't even have to mention that like before you're king. You just have to say that she's supporting me, we're together, you get all of those people supporting you, and then afterwards you can be like, she's my hand, and then you make them deal with it.
Yeah.
They might have had enough votes that way, maybe.
No, it seems like everyone was supporting Euron at the end, which was horrifying.
Yeah, because there weren't any good unifying options. I mean, like he did a lot, giving people like lands, and he came in right away, shaking things up. And meanwhile, these two have been sitting around bickering and just sort of being like, "Well, I'm good with what I've got." Like they didn't get any, they didn't make any gains, and like if they consolidated, that would have been a huge gain.
I think the effect would have been the same.
Maybe
it might have been.
Let's say they had won. Let's say Victarion had won the Kingsmoot. Which side would they have taken in the War for the Five Kings, or however many are left at this point?
Victarion.
If Victarion and Asha were now like in charge here, and they were suing for peace, who would they have actually sued for peace with?
The North.
No.
Well, but the North is now who? The North is now the Boltons, which are with the king.
Yeah, I don't think so. Either way, I think still that Victarion would try to uphold Balon's wishes, which would be that they get the North somehow.
But yeah, I think the Boltons would actually be the easier one to make peace with, to make an alliance with.
Yeah,
because
but that's not
the Boltons are with Joffrey, sort of.
Right.
But to be honest, like Lord Bolton, he hikes it up to the north, and he's preparing to keep what's his. So I don't know. Like he's ready to break with the Lannisters if he has to.
Yeah, I don't think so. I honestly think that the Victarion would take the side that would leave him the north, or most of the north, if he had a chance.
But none of the sides would have probably. So.
Well, I mean.
Yeah, but I don't know. I don't know. For the Boltons, that's not such a bad deal, because they go from just having their property to having most of the north. If you give some to the Ironborn, that wouldn't be terrible. But like, there's no way that they can rule the whole north. They're too stupid to realize it.
Yeah, but
but they're too proud. Like Victarion, they're too proud to realize it too, I think.
I think this is very far-fetched in any way, because you have to have Victarion going into this alliance anyways, which is improbable, and then you have to have him being able wanting to sue for peace with one of the sides where the whole mentality behind the Ironborn is not to pay a gold price or any other price. They pay the iron price.
Right.
So
yeah,
I mean,
to be sure, all of these scenarios are unlikely, and they would have to be hard fought.
Right.
But
still interesting.
But it's a guaranteed loss what they do here.
But that's the way the Ironborn operate. It is that there's like one time in the whole history of the Ironborn where they have actually been able to consolidate their power, and the only reason why they lost was because there were dragons all of a sudden. But in general, and we also have to add there that guy did not act as a true Ironborn. He chose to settle on the Greenlands and everything. So I'm saying I do not see this happening if they keep their old ways, which they want to. That's the whole reason why Baelor...
Yeah, well, wasn't...
Right, and Balon already screwed it up when he tried it the first time.
When he tried to settle the Riverlands, didn't a lot of the Ironborn kind of reject that idea?
Yeah.
So, I mean, even without the dragons and stuff, he was already facing, the potential of, a civil war or a fracture or something like that.
Right.
It was pretty much... he was pretty much the strongest in that area, and even though he didn't have full support from his homeland, he still had like the Riverlands plus a bit more of the Stormlands and the Crownlands as well. So I mean, there was a reason why the Baratheons wanted the Targaryens to help them in the war against Black Heron.
Not the Baratheons.
Yeah.
So yeah. So I mean, I'm just saying that it's pretty much unlikely if they are as Ironborn are, which is proud, maybe too proud, maybe a little too proud.
Just a little. I mean, his downfall here is because he doesn't accept anything. He's either I'm going to fight for it all or nothing. And he gets he doesn't. I guess he doesn't get nothing. I mean, he's still, he's still head of the fleet and all that. But
yeah, I think he understands. He has just a slightly skewed understanding of the, or I think actually he might actually have a better understanding of how the Ironborn operate than most of the other people we hear about. I mean, the only reason, Aeron has, he is slightly delusional about Victarion getting the Iron Throne or the Seastone Chair, and Asha,
slightly.
Well, she is. Her plan will never work with the Ironborn, no matter how she concocts it. The way the Ironborn is right now, they feel strong, they feel mighty, they feel back to their roots. They will never go for her plan. So yeah, he's in better touch with the Ironborn than any of the other people are, and that's just. And even though he might not be the best person to get married to, or
or anything,
he's still the best option.
Better than a sea lion. But if he had just taken right away to finding Euron and killing him, that's really his only play.
Yep.
But he's too scared of Euron.
I think that leads to an interesting question I wanted to ask. Is there's a comment in there that the thought of Euron as king woke an old rage in his heart. Now it seems like that's because of the thing with his wife, but I'm wondering, since later we're going to get to the whole rusty nail thing and all that, the rusty door. Is there any chance that Euron actually pulled it on Victarion too?
I don't think so.
You think Victarion stood up to him, or did?
Yeah, I think they're too close in age for that to happen. I think that he only did it on the the very young ones.
Yeah, Euron only works out of advantage.
True.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't like. I mean, we have from what we've seen so far. It's not that he's like a coward or anything, but he doesn't like to have to work too hard for things. He doesn't want to have to risk losing. Like he just fucked off and ran away, right? And he didn't show up until things were in his favor.
Well, he made them in his favor.
Right. But like,
or so we think. We don't know.
The situation had to be that way where he could come and kill Balon and Swoopman. 10 years ago he didn't come back. There's a reason why.
Speaking of Euron, did you notice that the Iron Maiden on the Hall of the Silence has no mouth, just like all the people have lost their tongues to him? little point I disliked.
This guy's so creepy.
Right?
Yeah, he is a supervillain.
Yeah, when I was reading this the first time, I didn't get any of that. None of these characters made any real impression on me. Sorry, Patrick, but I know I'm braving your wrath here, but I mean, I've said it before, like Victarion's the only character that I just hate reading about. I have no interest in, and I'm liking it a little more interesting now that, since we know where we have a better idea of where George is going with this. But I mean, the first time I read this, I was just like almost resenting that we have to read this. It's like, what does this have to do with anything? I don't like this. And as it goes on, like I just have no interest. Like, you've got the bad characters. You've got your Joffrey. You've got your Bastard of Bolton. You've got all them and Ramsay. They're interesting to read about, even though they're awful, awful people. Euron is interesting to read about, but Victarion, I just never give a crap about. Like, in fact, a friend of mine, we have like, little catchphrases we'll do. And whenever we're talking about like awful people or like, we'll make a joke, we'll just say the Dusky Woman. Because we just hate this character, and I just wanted to skip these chapters. I know you don't agree with that, but
wow, yeah.
Well,
it's just how I know a lot of some people either love. This is one of those characters you either love or you hate, I think.
My view of Victarion has evolved slightly over the years, because at first I was I just wanted to punch him in the face all the time. And now I still do, but I take it a little less seriously, and it helps.
Yeah.
To kind of view him as really the archetype of a stupid macho character who really doesn't know what he's doing.
I mean, he is created for failure.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
I don't know. I think that's, again...
Sorry, Patrick.
That's a false assumption, basically.
I love it. I love it.
I think,
and I love that you think that, for the record.
The thing is that he is so set up for failure that it seems like that is the trap. Basically, I think that
it could be subverted. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. That George is trying to make us hate him and dislike him and think that everything he does, he's been being manipulated by Euron.
And now he's going to come out of Slaver's Bay riding a dragon with Quentin.
Maybe.
Well,
with Quentin. I love it. I love it.
Some extent of it, at least.
I
think that he might still be a pawn in this whole game, but I think he might come out on top, anyways. And that's going to be the interesting thing, how he's going to come out on top. I think that him hooking up with Makoro is the best thing he ever did.
Have you heard how George describes Victarion, by the way? There were two interviews I was reading about when I was looking up the wiki on Westeros. It was he said in one he called him dumb as a stump, and then he also called him a dullard and a brute, which is probably why I don't like the character, because that's the thing is, so we have two characters. Okay, think of Tormund and Victarion, right? And it's just how George is skewing them for us. I mean, I think this is all the author's hand, because, like I said, Victarion could be a great character,
but George puts all these elements in and just is constantly beating him down. I don't see it going anywhere significant in the end, but I think he could have been, and I think I would have liked that character a lot better. But
exactly,
whatever.
Okay, so
he's a great fighter.
I have to also, you say that, well, he killed his wife and everything, and I say yes, that is true, and that's not a good thing. I totally agree on that one.
And he beat her.
Not only did he kill his wife, he also beat her to death. He also thinks he did not have a choice in the matter.
Exactly.
Well,
he thinks he's the victim.
In a way,
exactly.
Jaime also thinks he didn't have an option with throwing Bran out of the window, right?
But clearly in this case, that's completely different.
Is that completely different?
It's not completely different. I get what you're saying, but both are terrible acts that he felt kind of forced into. But I think that where Jaime actually is like, I'm forced to do this, Victarion is forced to do this by his pride and his own conceptions of the world, versus trying to prevent a secret or
save his family.
Do you think it was cold and calculated murder from Victarion, or do you think it also was a passion crime?
I think it was a passionate crime, but I don't necessarily know if it was a passionate crime towards his wife, more towards his own pride and his own he can't get over the fact that there's another man's baby in there, and I mean there's options for that in this world. We hear about that all the time, but I think it's just something he couldn't get over, so he killed her, and selfish.
Yeah, and selfish.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. I'm saying that there are plenty of horrible characters in this, or people that do horrible things in these books, and because he basically describes his own actions as they are, instead of trying to doing anything else.
He's not. He's justifying them. He did not have to kill her. Yes, it would have hurt his pride. Yes, it would have made him look bad, but it wouldn't have done them damage. It wouldn't have hurt his family. It wouldn't have hurt her, and he did this because he felt like this was an insult to me, so I have to get rid of the evidence, even if that evidence is my wife. And instead of even poisoning her or something, he had to bludgeon her to death with his own hands. There's no way you can justify that.
Also,
I'm not justifying.
Right.
Also, if you want to compare Jaime to Victarion, the way they look at their actions is completely different, because Jaime agrees that he did a terrible thing. Right. He's like, okay, I don't have any honor. People know that. I'm a bad person, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Victarion thinks something bad happened to him.
Right.
And not the other way around.
And he was forced to do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not he chose. He doesn't.
And there's no redeeming qualities for Victarion later with this stuff. And I mean, I think that's the main part that makes it so horrific, is that he's sitting there not only reminiscing about a bad thing he did, but again, it's like, well, I didn't do it. Really, Euron did this.
Jaime,
he's deflecting, and when you have a criminal, right, and they go before the judge, what's one of the things you always hear is remorse goes a long way, right? When it comes to sentencing and stuff. I mean, that's just that's how I think we react as people. If someone comes into court, it's like, I'm so sorry, it was an accident, I killed your family member, I know it was wrong, I'll take my punishment. Versus no, I didn't do it, I'm not guilty, fuck you, they deserved it. You're gonna throw the book at them, right? And so I think as the audience, we throw the book at him because he doesn't really have any remorse.
I think it hounds him, but he doesn't. He places himself clearly as a victim in this, which is
in his defense. Sorry.
I guess also another difference with Jaime and other characters who do terrible things. I agree, Patrick, that we're very forgetting of a lot of things that these characters do because we love them. Right. But they are also more relatable, I guess. And the Victarion, the way he's written doesn't make me want to sympathize with him. Not a lot. And it's really different with a lot of other characters.
I see your point, and I agree that it's not completely. There's so many people that do a lot of weird stuff. Like Tyrion, for example, that also has there's like a number of people like where they not be murder
their wife to death.
Well, they kill their father, rape a girl, and never think twice about it. Kill a innocent singer that maybe has said that he might let go of a secret, but he chose to kill him and serve him as a stew.
Guess what? People are less and less inclined to like Tyrion since Dance, because indeed, he's a character that has gone bad, and we feel less. It's less easy to love him because he's changed so much, and we don't understand him as much as we did in the first few books. And I guess, I'm open to Victarion evolving, but right now he doesn't quite. So it's the whole difference with Jaime as well. He evolves quite a lot. So obviously you forget his ancient actions. But the Victarion is quite consistent with himself.
The one thing I'll say about Victarion in his defense, and I didn't remember this, and when I read it, I was actually a little struck by this, is that when he was bludgeoning her to death, he was actually crying, which I didn't actually expect for, such a masculine character and whatever, macho, to actually be crying while he's doing this horrible thing. So it was striking to me too, and I do sympathize with him a little bit, because this whole thing with Euron, Aaron, and the other brothers is just so wrong. Awful. There's clearly awful dynamics there. So obviously it's going to be fucked up. That's like there's there's no way it could have been different. But so I do understand, not understand, but sympathize with him a little bit at times. But yeah, and. I also liked in this chapter, actually, like when he's actually happy to see Asha, and this is nice up until the point where he thinks of her as a potential wife. Ew.
And you're like, they love each other as a family,
Nuncle.
Oh no!
As he's getting a hard on. Ew.
Yeah, I mean. So, anyways.
Tell us more how you love it.
I just want to point out one more thing that strikes me as kind of inconsistent with the Ironborn culture, is that when Theon goes back to the Iron Islands and wears like nice clothes with the Kraken sigil and jewelry, he gets ridiculed by his father, saying he didn't earn any of that and he should wear plain clothes and be proud of them, etc. In this chapter, Victarion is wearing a cloak made of 9 layers of cloth of gold sewn in the shape of the Kraken of Greyjoy. How pretentious is that?
Do you think? Did
he steal it?
But
that's the thing. He stole it.
If it's sewn in the shape of the Kraken of his own house, he did not steal it from him.
No, but he probably
had
stole
it
the
made
materials
with
and had his salt
right.
make it.
Exactly.
It's definitely ill-gotten gain. Whereas
where Theon just went to
market.
Shit. Theon went to market with money and made it for him.
And not his money, with Stark money.
Right.
Yeah, but where'd you draw the line between you have to look like a hard fighter who earns his place and people who just make ridiculous fashion choices?
Well, I guess it's also still the thing that he's not from. They don't think of him as from the Iron Islands anymore. He's been fostered. The integral part of his upbringing has been done in the north. So he's a mainlander now. So yes, that might be a bit over the top for
Victarion.
For Victarion, but Victarion is also, first of all, trying to win the favor of people on the Kingsmoot,
Sure.
Which
also, yeah.
Which Theon wasn't.
I just love that we have Fashion Cast Part 2 here.
Part 2 only?
That's there was a Fashion Cast 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, we keep talking about coats on like the various movie reviews. And, yeah. I'm just waiting to see what people are wearing in The Last Jedi, because that's why I go.
Fashion
also,
cast.
like, it's mentioned in this chapter that Euron is actually bribing a lot of Iron Islands captains, I guess. So that doesn't quite make sense either, because
they're not taking the iron price.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess because when we do get to the Kingsmoot, and it's weird because like that's part of the whole thing is like people show up and it's like they dump their hauls, and I guess it's like they're saying that like this is the stuff they stole and it shows how prolific they are, but then they're just giving it away to people, and these people are they're like all these captains are greedy to get these gifts, and it's okay.
And they're perfectly okay with the fact that they just
their culture is very confusing.
Yeah,
I guess gifts are okay as long as someone stole it from someone else.
Yeah, that's basically.
I don't know. This would be a good point. I guess we can say, we've kind of covered this chapter quite a bit so far. So I would say at this point, if you guys want to get into some of the Forsaken chapter,
one little tiny point,
just for people who haven't read any of the Winds of Winter chapters.
Can I ask one little point just before we move on? Just because it's minor, but it's interesting to me, is that Sithorios, which is the continent that's like similar to Africa. It's mentioned in here briefly, and it's spelled Sithoros without the Y, and that was the case in a few mentions, I think, early, and then at some point it changed, and I'm wondering if that was like George changed his mind, or if it's one of those it has a few different pronunciations kinds of things, or I wonder why he made like a change like that.
Well, I don't know. These people say nuncle, so
right, maybe that's true, which we get lots of here.
And there's a couple times where Aeron is called Arion, and Prince Aemon, the Dragon Knight, is mixed up with someone else. Like, there's some inconsistencies in spelling at different points in these books.
And I'm sad to say that is probably just George not being that.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, just these books.
Or he couldn't make up his mind between Sothoros and Sothorios.
Right. Well, it was interesting to me.
Northros, Sothoros, Westeros, Essos. Like, it's not very clever. I mean.
Right. That was one of those. Maybe that was one of those that was too obvious. We have S, West. Let's add a Y in there to make it less obvious. I don't know, but it just came out to me because I really loved the stuff in the World Book about Sithorios. So interesting that the name changed somewhere along the line, and not that long ago. I mean, it wasn't in the first book. Like, we're already into the fourth book, and it's changed since then.
Yeah.
So. Also. If you want to be a total hater on Victarion, you also think about his way of describing the black men there.
Yep.
That was one of the things that I didn't really agree with.
Well,
you can get behind killing your wife, but.
Well, again, it's the point of view of Victarion. I didn't want to go into that, but he basically sees his wife as property, which was like, let's not go into that.
I was joking, Patrick.
Okay, good, because
I know. You can have fun with it still. You're allowed to like whoever you want, but we're allowed to laugh at it. That's all. It's fair, and you can laugh at some of the things I think, so that's fine. Still
I would never. I have too much respect for you, David.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go because I haven't read the Forsaken chapter.
I think it's
so.
Alix,
I'm not going to be participating in the discussion.
Are you avoiding all Winds preview chapters?
No. It's just that I haven't gotten around to reading it yet.
Okay, all right.
I've read some of them, and others I haven't. I think I've read about.
Well, we put a link in the chat if you want to look for it.
Yeah.
I'll read it eventually, but I just don't have time right now.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I'm just asking because I was avoiding this one because I thought there was no full version that I could read, only recaps.
Okay.
But I found out there is, so yeah, I thought it might be the same for you. But if it's just
no, there's a couple I haven't read yet. The Sansa one and this one.
Oh, you need to read that one.
Ariane chapter as well.
Yeah, the Sansa one is good.
I'm keeping them for the long wait. Okay.
Actually, all of them. Actually, all of them except for the there's one of them that's not very I don't enjoy that much, but
I think
some of them we only have like the secondhand version.
Right.
So
that's what I think is so interesting is that this one, someone was recording it and then we've like transcribed it, so now we all have it. And I don't think George actually intended us to all have this, but oh well.
Well, that's what you get for waiting 9 years between books.
Right, give me the damn book and I'll read it. Until then,
sorry, no disrespect meant to George.
Oh, I love him as much as I appreciate him too.
All right, so that's another episode under wraps here. And let's see, if you're following along at home, the next episode 60, I believe is hosted by Casey. That will cover Aeron 2, the Drowned Man from Feast of Crows, Arya 13 from Storm of Swords, and the epilogue for Storm of Swords. So check us out on YouTube, Instagram, Twitters, all the various things. If you're on YouTube and you wonder why sometimes stuff seems like you get it months later, check the iTunes feed or the WordPress, because that's always the most up-to-date. And anyway, thank you guys for joining.
Well, thank you, Adam.
Bye. Thank you. Thanks for hosting us.
Thank you.
Well, not really bye.
Okay. Bye, guys. It was
bye,
fun.
Alex.
Thanks for joining us.
Bye.
Yeah.